看到了。
Folks, can you hear me? This is Kathy. Okay. Not the way I wanted to start, with a technical difficulty, really. So I wonder how many people we have joining us. It's just now 2 o'clock and it looks like I have 3. Wow, almost 3 screens full. So how many that is.
One of our faculty members in ethnic studies and returns to share her insights and experiences.
It was a commercial brought to you by some institution, not sure which one. We'll give them just a couple more minutes here, folks, just so everybody has an opportunity to join. It's gorgeous in most places. It is absolutely stunning here in Indiana today. It's 70 plus.
Same in Ohio, it's gorgeous.
From me in Oregon.
Cool. I see Kim thinks we should need some intro music. I'll see if the Jacob School can provide some in the future. Or I'll just blast you with my Pandora. I don't think you really want that. Careful what you ask for. Cool and windy in Lincoln, Nebraska. All right, yeah, there were some clouds and storms here yesterday. Wonder if that means we're going to get that soon. All right, we're on 4 screens and counting. This might set a record. All right, I'm going to kick us off and then pass quickly to James Russell. First, I want to thank everybody that's here. We're at 4 screens. I'm kind of secretly hoping we get to 5 because I think that would be a record for my Unizin experience so far. And if not, I think 4 is pretty impressive too. It might actually be a record. I have to actually count them. I want to thank everybody from the University of Michigan who's talking today, who's giving us an overview of what is Unizin's right now only hosted application, and one that's been hosted for several years now and has been I don't know if implemented is the word, but has been put into place to be implemented at 7 of our Unizin institutions. So it has far and wide adoption, far and wide impact. And I don't think that everybody necessarily knows what it is or what it can do. And I know that Michigan continues to iterate and make changes and update it and provide support for it. So even if you saw MyLA a few years ago, it may not be the MyLA you're looking at today. MyLA, of course, is the short name for My Learning Analytics. So with that said, I'm going to very quickly pass to James Russell, Unizin Senior Director of Research Support and Assurance, who's going to introduce the Michigan folks here today. Thank you for coming.
Thanks, Kathy. I'd like to introduce Jennifer Love and Stephanie Teasley, and they're going to discuss My Learning Analytics, MyLA.
All right. Did you want to give us any other introduction, or are you ready for us to jump in?
Sure, that sounds good.
Okay. So Stephanie and I are really, really pleased to be invited to talk to you today about MyLA. It's been a fantastic project here at Michigan, and we're really excited to see it being used at other schools in Unizin. I'm going to go ahead and Stephanie, do you want to give any other background on yourself before we get started?
No, some people I know or have met on in this group, and yeah, so I'm a research faculty member at the School of Information at the University of Michigan. I've been doing research on learning for a long time, and particularly working in the area of learning analytics since before we called it learning analytics. And I'm the past president of the Society for Learning Analytics Research, which is the academic group that it's sort of coalesced around the idea of learning analytics and hosts the annual conference every year, the LAC conference, Learning Analytics and Knowledge. Last year at the online LAC, we presented one paper with some data from MyLA, from analysis of the behavioral data from the first full term when 10 courses used it. So we were happy with that. And we have some other pieces in progress that we'll be reporting out on some of the research on it. But we have way more data than we've been able to analyze yet. So I can show you some of what we know. I welcome your questions about what you're curious about. And I can tell you, because we're looking for ideas too, about what we should be looking for in the data. We have a lot, and you may have different ones, and that will be exciting to hear. So go ahead, Jennifer, do you want to share the screen with our slides then?
Yep. Let me go ahead and present those.
Great. Yeah, I think we were told that we'd have about 40 minutes, and I don't know how to pace it because I don't know what the variability in your familiarity with the tool is. And so break in and say, speed it up if we're going in too much detail for you, or break in and say, slow down, this is really new to me, I don't really know what you're talking about. Okay. So first of all, we know we're here to talk about MyLA, and I wanted to, it's strictly for the students. It's not the instructor-facing dashboard. We knew at the time when we started this project that Canvas was planning their own analytics for instructors, so we didn't have to worry about that. We also knew that a lot of other commercial products like Blackboard already had student-facing dashboards built in. The ones we reviewed from the literature and from the other commercial products were pretty bad. And there were a couple of really nice scholarly articles about what was wrong with them. So we decided we were going to make our own, and we were going to try to not make mistakes that other people were making. So next slide, please. So as I said, they're all around today, and they typically provide reports of activity primarily, right? And performance indicators, and almost all of them give the students some comparison with a peer group, typically the students in that same class with them, or historically what other students in that class have done. But usually you're giving the students some kind of benchmarking tool for them to make some plans or changes or reflection on what they've been doing so far that they may need to do differently in the future. Now we made a advisors facing dashboard here at Michigan, gosh, a long time ago. And people at that time asked us, well, this looks great. Why don't you give it to students? Why aren't you showing students that same information? And at that time, we were really hesitant because we knew that academic advisors both could understand the data, they knew where it was coming from, and they had a lot of experience interpreting that data and telling students what to do about that. Well, as I said, they're out there now. We're giving them directly to students, and this makes several assumptions that are really research questions. The first is that these peer comparisons are helpful, or at least not harmful. That's very much an empirical question. The second one is that students can interpret the visualizations. Well, from a lot of the ones we reviewed, I don't know how they could possibly interpret them because we couldn't. And the third item is an important area of learning analytics is that the information should be actionable. But by actionable, that means that students should know what to do with the information. Telling them they're at, 83% risk of failing the course, that doesn't really tell them very much about what to do about that or why they're in that position. So next slide, please. So as I referred to, there were a couple of articles that showed some existing problems with what we knew about dashboards. And these are the problems that I suggested earlier that we were trying to fix. The primary one is we wanted to have some underlying theoretical reason for giving them the information we were giving them and giving it to them in the form we were giving it to them. The other thing is that there is rarely people just hack these up in their lab and go out there and test them. And usually there's very little reliability testing, checking in with users as they're using it, before they use it, and the design process or so forth. A trickier one, and this one will remain tricky for us, but a lot of these systems don't examine effects of use on outcomes. So they may talk about, as we do, how many students use them or what they're using, but it's very difficult, of course, to say that use of any educational tool is the reason why someone's grade improved. So we have to think about what are other measures that we can use that suggests that the dashboard is, worth initiating, and that would be an interesting conversation that we could have here too. And then, as I said, they're often not looking at what's the effect of the performance comparisons. They typically have a one-size-fits-all design. And also importantly, a lot of them are really what I would call artisanal dashboards or bespoke dashboards, right? They're not designed to scale. And we wanted to make a dashboard that worked for any, oh, I'm sorry, that's my dog behind me who sees the squirrel in the backyard. Sorry. Oh, please. So we wanted to have a dashboard that not only could be used across our campus, but hopefully, in the case of Unizin, used by other schools. Jennifer, if you will say a word or two about the background, I'm going to put the dog in the kennel.
Sure, no problem. So given all of the, the knowledge that Stephanie and some of the other researchers had about dashboards and some of what we'd seen on the IT side in terms of the dashboards that were coming out, we got together and started talking about what we could create. And so MyLA was actually designed and developed by a project team, and I'm the project leader on this team, but it includes people from the School of Information and the School of Education. So Stephanie, one of her colleagues in the School of Information, and then Stuart Karabenik from the School of Education. We've also included throughout the project graduate and undergraduate students because we very much wanted to have them on the team helping us develop it to give their insights and their feedback and their thoughts from the student perspective. And then it's from the ITS side, our Information and Technology Services side, our teaching and learning group included developers and analysts who help bring this into realization. And then more recently, the University of Columbia, British Columbia, contributed a lot of development on the new assignment planning view that you'll see today. So we've started working with them collaboratively as well. So Stephanie, do you want to talk about project goals?
Yep. So as I said, we wanted to avoid doing some things wrong. And the things that we wanted to do right were, of course, to develop these learning analytics-based visualizations. In terms of theoretical frames, we wanted to provide information that promotes metacognitive skills. We know that students who are better at what's called self-regulation do better, perform better academically. And so we wanted to be able to have our dashboard be providing them with opportunities to engage in some of the processes that underlie self-regulation, like planning and monitoring and reflection. And that's the second point, reflect on what they're currently doing, because you can't figure out where you need to go next if you aren't thinking about where you are and how you got there and what you might want to do differently. So planning and modifying, reflecting are all these skills that we're talking about. And then, of course, the sort of the buy-in from the ITS side was that we thought it would be really good plan to use the to leverage the Unizin data platform for this tool, given that that platform was at the time just being built and coming out. So we developed a set of design guidelines as our starting point and kind of iterated on these and refined these as we went along. And I'm showing you 6 guidelines here that kind of sum up things that I've already said, but this put them in terms of guidelines, like how we were checking ourselves, saying, does this fit one of our design guidelines when we were making choices? So the first one, of course, relates to theory. The second one is this idea about agency, and it goes back to this one-size-fits-all notion for dashboards. We wanted to give students some control over what they see. We know that students aren't all the same. They don't all have the same goal for any given course, and they don't always, they have different reference groups that they may want to compare themselves with. We wanted to support social comparison because all dashboards do, and with so little empirical evidence about what's the value of this and how to do it right, we thought we needed to put it in our dashboard and look at it really carefully to see what we could learn about it. The fourth one, the guideline came after we did this review of so many other dashboards that were so complex and had all different kinds of visualizations, pie charts and heat maps. And so my colleague from the School of Information, Matt Kay, is an information visualization specialist, and he drew on his knowledge about what are very simple and consistent and interpretable visualization methods, and we would be consistent with them across all actions in the dashboard. The fifth one, of course, is student privacy, right? We wanted the dashboard to support student privacy, and we wanted students to feel comfortable to use it. We tell them that the instructors can't see their dashboard. The instructor can't go in and look at what any individual is doing. Only they can see their own dashboard. And we have some other privacy aspects that I'll get into when we show you what the dashboard looks like. And the last one, of course, was the guideline that helped us make sure that it would work in Canvas, leveraging the UDP. We thought this was clearly the path to scale and adoption. Okay, so where we are so far, over 60 courses have had it. It's been the first few times were really us recruiting, finding instructors, passing the word around a little bit, having instructors volunteer. The teaching and learning team at ITS did an amazing job over this past summer, making it possible for instructors to turn it on themselves and creating the tool to do that, which took us out of the loop, which is kind of good news, bad news in some ways. We can also talk about that, but it means now that any instructor, it's really an advertising issue now, promoting it and having instructors think about, do they want to turn it on? Why should they turn it on? How do they turn it on? But we've had over 4,000 students who have had the opportunity to use it. And some students, especially because I recruit heavily for my own school, some students, particularly those in the School of Information, have used it in at least 3 or more courses. Right now, Jennifer tells me we have 32 courses that have turned it on, which is a new high for us. We haven't hit our goal of 50 courses yet, but we're climbing. And then there's some additional uses for it, as we've noted here, some orientation when they could set up a Canvas course site for orientation or training or some other short courses. Sometimes people are using MyLA for that as well. We're really looking at the relationship between the dashboard and thinking about learning. So our data analysis mostly focuses on, real courses, if you will. So in total, we have 4 full semesters of data, which is the user, the behavioral data, the click log data. And then at the end of each academic term, we send out a survey. We hope that students will fill it out. We get, I don't know, sometimes 20, sometimes not quite 20% response rate. And that response, we send it out to everyone in the class and we tell them to please fill out the survey whether they used MyLA or not, because the non-users give us information about why they're not using it. And we also have some survey instruments that tie back to the theories that we're using about the dashboard. So we're able to see maybe students who are already high self-regulators are the one who aren't turning it on because they don't feel like they need it. Or conversely, maybe the users are all the high self-regulators because they know that it's an important thing to do and they'll make use of any tool that helps them do it better or more. So some of those questions we hope to be able to answer with the survey data. And the other thing we don't have on here, Jennifer, we've just started trying some pop-up surveys. A little survey button that comes up occasionally during the semester and ask them a couple of quick questions. Since our end of term survey rate, like I said, is not as high as we'd hoped, we were trying to see whether just doing some spot check pop-up surveys, we could get some further information about how students were using it in situ and check that at various different times during the term. So stay tuned for that.
And we did have a couple of questions in the chat.
Oh, good, because I
So-
can't see the chat from here. You can see
No
it.
worries. So the first one was whether students can turn it on without the instructor consent. And actually, no, instructors do have control of whether or not they turn it on in their Canvas course and which visualizations, which are the 3. So we'll talk a little bit about that in the demo. Another question that came in is it recommended for a certain type of course in terms of course level or enrollment or subject matter? Which is a great question.
It is a great question. Because we're still figuring it all out, anybody who wants to use it can use it. If it's a very, very small class, like 10 students, 12 students, it doesn't make a lot of sense and starts to ooch closer to some of those privacy issues. I've been excited to try to recruit more of these very large gateway courses. It's especially because they're newer students, freshmen, sophomore. I particularly want to look at the data that we just finished collecting from our fall term because that was our first only online full term. We could compare that use to the prior fall pre-COVID. I know anecdotally a lot of students with the Canvas only being their only interaction mechanism for courses feel like it's a black box and that they get stuff from it and they throw stuff back at it and they have no idea really about what goes on between. So I'm wondering if a dashboard like this is particularly more important in an only online. We designed it really so that any kind of course can use it. I think there's going to possibly be some differences between grading schemes. Like if a course grades on a curve, then the students really want to know how they're doing relative to the distribution because they're trying to predict what end of it they're going to be at when it's all said and done.
We did have a couple of other questions.
Yep.
I want to try to do them quickly so we get to get into the demo.
Yep.
Can we get a copy of the survey questions?
Yes.
How can folks do that? Is it best to contact you directly or?
Yeah, I have a Word doc or PDF version of the Qualtrics survey you can take a look at. There's probably going to be more efficient and effective ways to do that. If you use Qualtrics on your campus, we could share a copy with you and you could import it to your environment. We are open to collaborating on the survey. If there are things that you want to make it shorter, you want to take off, or there are things that are particular focus for your campus that you want to add, those might be great ideas for us as well as anybody else at Unizin. There's some standard questions that I think we would want to keep consistent across campuses. And we could talk about what those are and see if people agree that that's something they want to do.
Great. With as few courses as we have, could we have reps show up in class or synchronously to ask about the survey? Take 5 or 10 minutes at the end of class.
50 courses are, or more. We kept trying to do things that were scalable. So actually what we're going to do very, very soon before the next pop-up survey is we're going to send an email to all the students who are in courses that have it turned on that will achieve 3 goals. 1, to alert them to the pop-up survey button that's coming. 2, to serve as a reminder that it's there, because I think, as I'll probably tell you later, the major reason that students don't use MyLA is they forgot it was there or they didn't know it was there. So instructors aren't always doing a great job of highlighting to students, I've turned this tool on, here's the demo, those kinds of things. Yeah, so Sean has put up the contact pages. We'll have to have an efficient way to disseminate the survey, and I see Kathy has made a suggestion about how we might do that. If you give me your email in the chat, I'm likely to lose it after the meeting ends. But we'll figure it out. Anyone who wants to get hold of it, we'll make sure you get a hold of it.
We're happy to share it.
Yeah.
The only other question we had was if it's whether MyLA is only on a course-by-course basis, or do you have a dashboard to show all their courses, which is a question I love, because we have had that feedback from students that they would love to see it across courses, but right now it does only show their information within a single course.
Yeah, when we talk about the planning view, students have said, oh my gosh, can't you show me this on one screen for all my classes so I can see everything that's coming up in the following week? And also a question on our survey has been, just yes or no, would you like MyLA turned on for all your courses? And yes, they would.
So our other, just brief information on where we are today, as Kathy mentioned at the beginning, Unizin is hosting MyLA. This is the information I got from Etienne. So we have, when you add this up, that's 60 courses across these schools with almost 10,000 users, about 9,500 users, which is huge increase of use of MyLA. And we're really, really excited to see it at other schools and get feedback from other schools to hear questions that people are running into, ideas that folks have. So this is absolutely fantastic from our point of view.
Yeah, it's long been my dream to do multi-institutional research. I worry when we were building this dashboard and testing it and publishing about its use at Michigan. We know that Michigan students are not representative of all college students. And, is it kind of a tool to help the rich get richer kind of thing? And I am really interested to see what we can learn from use on your campuses, where your students may look different from ours in lots of different ways that will be interesting to explore. Okay, let's show them the tool.
All right, so let me move my Zoom controls out of the way. All right, so MyLA exists within Canvas. And so what I'm bringing up here is just a basic test Canvas course, Psych 123B. This is my test course. So I'm logged in right now as myself and as an instructor for this course, just to show you really quickly how we've enabled it. So anyone who wants to use MyLA can use it. So they simply go in their settings in their course as they're setting it up and into the navigation for their course. And it is available to anybody at the University of Michigan simply by enabling it in their navigation. And don't forget to click save. And now My Learning Analytics has been added. We can see it's here in the navigation, and we can see it here on the left-hand side. And then simply by going and clicking on it once, the first time, what the instructor is doing is initiating MyLA. It's an LTI tool. And so when that button is pushed, this course information is sent out to MyLA. And then the course data is refreshed once a day in MyLA. And so that's why we see this course data is being processed. And so when the next day's data runs, the instructor will now be able to come in here and decide which they can see the visualizations, and they can decide which ones do I want to turn on for my students. So it's that simple in terms of turning MyLA on, which is great. Like Stephanie said, it's really a matter of advertising and letting people know that it's there. So so the instructor sets it up, they turn it on, but then what does the student see? So I'm going to jump over here to Firefox where I'm logged in as student C in Canvas in my Psych 123 course. And so I've got My Learning Analytics turned on. And so when I click My Learning Analytics as a student, it's going to load here and it's going to load inside Canvas. And I'm going to see all of the visualizations that my instructor has turned on for me. And so an instructor may choose to turn on one visualization, two, or all three. For the sake of the demo, of course, I have all three turned on. Also, for the sake of the demo, what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump over here and look at My Learning Analytics outside of Canvas, just to give us a little more screen real estate for what we're looking at today. But students would be doing all of this inside their Canvas course. So let's start with resources accessed. And when I come into the resources access screen, what this is showing me is essentially what files and videos have been accessed by students in this course. And so it always defaults to now and 2 weeks prior. So what in the last 2 weeks have students been looking at in this course? It also defaults to showing me what resources have been accessed here, week 10 to week 12, with students with these grades. And so maybe I only want to see those that have are accessed by folks with 90 to 100%. We'll look at that filter in a minute. So just kind of orienting you to the screen here, the types of resources to be viewed. In this case, we have files and videos, and these files are files inside the Canvas course. And the videos, in our case, this is video data from our Kaltura setup. So we call it My Video here, but that's where these are videos that are inside my Canvas course as well. And so I can see, this gives me the option to filter by different types. But the main part of the screen is this bar chart down here. And here's where we start getting into some of the visual language of our dashboard. We'll start seeing that we have a lot of bar charts and a lot of colors that show up over and over again. So all of these files listed down the left-hand side here, these are the files that have been accessed by at least one student within this course in the last 2 weeks. And what it's showing me across the bottom is what percentage of the students in my selected grade range, in this case all, have viewed this individual file. And so we can see the most popular file is Everybody's Reading Chapter 2, Social Learning and Social Cognition. 69% of students in the course have looked at this sometime in the last 2 weeks. And I've looked at it. It's in blue. So that's what my legend here is showing me. I've looked at something because it's in blue. And if I mouse over it, I can see I've looked at this 8 times. And the last time I looked at it was on Sunday. But I might also notice that, wow, half of the class has accessed these other 2 files, these next ones down, social affect and this cross-cultural study. And I haven't looked at these because it's in gray. And if I mouse over it, it tells me again, you haven't accessed this resource. And so if I want to access this resource, all of the names here are hyperlinks. And so I can click on it and it will open the resource for me. We don't actually need to open that PDF, but it's a quick way. So I don't have to go back and find where that was in my course. I can just open it right here from MyLA. The system defaults to showing the top 7 or 8 files. We do that because sometimes there are a lot of files in a course and this can get very, very busy. And so there's a brush tool over here on the right-hand side where students can choose to see more files if they want. You notice it gets smaller and smaller, or they can just choose to move it and see more on the list. So that's where they start to get some interactivity. They also have interactivity on all these things at the top. So perhaps what I want to see is not what's happening the last 2 weeks. Maybe I want to go back and look at, well, what happened before the midterm because I'm studying for the final. What were folks looking at back in, these weeks right before the midterm? And so I want to make sure I've looked at all of those. That's great. I've looked at everything that people were looking at before the midterm. Set that back. And they just slide these back and forth to see different parts of the term. If I want to see what the A students are reading. So am I doing with the same thing, reading the same files or accessing the same videos that folks that are getting 90 to 100% of the class are looking at? And I pick that, and I can actually make that my default setting as a student if I want. So if I know that's what I always care about, so that I don't have to come in and set it every time, I can make that my default setting. And then I can see, well, 75% of them have accessed this, and at least 50% of those folks. Okay, I still want to look at those files. And then finally, maybe I really want to look at, well, what videos have I missed? I'm not worried about the files right now. I just want to look at the videos. So if I uncheck files, now I can see the 2 videos only 25% of the classes looked at them. I saw one of them, but didn't look at the other. So there's a lot of ways that students can interact with this and kind of drill down to the information that is most relevant to them.
So Jennifer, we have two questions up. The first is Kaltura required for the video section?
It doesn't have to be Kaltura, but we have to be getting Caliper events that are available in the UDP. So that can be configured to use other tools besides Canvas files and Kaltura videos. You just have to have Caliper events that you can point to.
Yeah, so the second question I think is related to that. If an instructor uses links to files and videos that are outside of Canvas, the analytics won't reflect the reality. Is that correct?
Yes, it would be missing some of that. And so that earlier question we had about what courses would you recommend this to? So if you have a information course where everything is happening in some tool outside of Canvas, and Canvas doesn't know about those events, then yeah, you're not going to have that information for this visualization.
Yeah, if the course has, for example, if it has an e-textbook, and all the things, all the reading and exercises and the examples and stuff you're all exiting Canvas to go into that e-textbook, then they don't show up. That's not such a good fit. I think as part of the scale and adoption mission for this is the notion that if the data is in Caliper, there is a way eventually to get it in here. I just did a presentation at a library conference and we were talking about library learning analytics, and I'm thinking about courses that maybe require an interview with a reference librarian, or they have to go to the special collections room and look at something. If those kinds of things can be represented in the library analytics data, then they could also be integrated here. So you could see, oh, I still haven't gone and done that other thing I'm supposed to do. So there's a lot of opportunity here for including more types of things in here that students need to be doing. We just have to have a data stream for it that works. Mm-hmm. Is the video info just about access or also duration? Only access. Just access. It's the same with the files. So we don't know if they've actually read them. We just know that they clicked and opened it, right? They may have opened it and printed it out, or they may have just opened it and saw, oh gosh, this is too long, I don't have time for it now, and closed it. So duration data would be interesting. We talk about the value of that data a lot in the learning analytics world because we know that students are often multitasking. So if it's open for a long time, does that mean they're actually watching it all that time? Or are they, also, watching something on their phone or talking to their roommate or other things? So yeah, Kim, duration data, I think it would be, cool to have it to see what we can make of it. How much extra it adds. I think that's a great idea.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and move us to the next visualization so that we have time. So assignment planning. This is the newest version of assignment planning. So some folks, if you've seen our assignment planning before, you may not have seen this version. So our assignment planning is really trying to do exactly what it says, help students plan how to manage their assignments. And so there's two major parts of this screen. At the top, there's a grade progress bar, and that is showing them information about their current grade and their max possible grade if they got all the points possible on all the remaining assignments. So again, one of the prerequisites for this to show up and make sense is that assignments exist in Canvas, that they have been published so students can see the name of them and due dates and point values. Details don't have to be available to students, but we're not going to show students any assignments that are not published in their Canvas course. So that is, again, a prerequisite to think about. But one of the new things that we've added to this particular visualization is the ability for students to set goals. And so if a student knows that they're getting currently a 91.4 and their max possible is 99, maybe they really care about this course, it's in their major, they want to do really well, they want to get an A, so they want to get a 95 as their goal. That's what they're shooting for. And so their goal will show up on the progress bar. And at the same time, all of the ungraded assignments will default scores for them. to show what they would need to get on any of the remaining assignments that haven't been graded in order to meet their goal. And that's just prorated across all of the remaining assignments. Maybe I don't, this is not a class that I care all that much about. I just need to pass it. I just want to, but I want to get an 08. How about an 80? So I just want to get 80%. So this gives students more agency and asks them to reflect, what is the minimum grade I'd be happy with in this class? What am I shooting for? What is my goal? But students, again, the other side of that is students don't have to set a goal. They can choose to just use the other parts of the screen without setting any goals at all. It's entirely up to them and what makes the most sense for them. So as I scroll down to the bottom part of the screen, the other big aspect of what this visualization is giving them is information about kind of the shape of the course, what's coming up in weeks ahead. So it always defaults to this week. And in my test course, we're in week 12. And then it shows for each given week, what's due that week, what's the name of the assignment, what % of my final grade. Because I've set a goal, it defaults to what my goal would need to be for this particular assignment to hit that grade. The status, I haven't submitted it. It hasn't been graded yet. So that's the status. Now, if I want to, I can start coming in here and changing the goals. Maybe I know I'm going to get 20 on all my discussions. So I'm going to change that. And that'll change all the remaining goals. So any goal that I set as a student, it locks and remembers, okay, student set that, don't make changes to this goal. But it will change all the other remaining goals based on what I set for this assignment. So it starts to get a little complicated, depending on how many goals you set and if you're setting goals at the assignment level as well. But students have absolute freedom to do that, to go in and set as many goals as they want.
And students generally think about things they know they're good at and things that they know are going to be harder or more challenging for them. So like that class participation, you could go through every class participation and say, I know I talk, or I know I post in the online discussion. So I know I'm always going to get 20 out of those 20 points. So I'm going to go and set 20 for all the class participation ones, and I'm going to lock it. And then that will help me see how much wiggle room I have on the assignments that are maybe going to be a little harder or going to take more time. Especially students may look at an assignment that has a high percentage of accounting for their grade, and they know it's coming like that, the final, right? But think about stuff before the final exam, like what if your midterm and the 3 other classes I'm in all have midterms? Like it's going to conflict, and I may have to make decisions about where I'm going to spend more of my energy or time, and what kind of hit am I going to take if I like only get an 80 on the midterm, given I've gotten 100% of the points out of everything else. There are a couple other things I want to say quickly in response to student feedback. You'll see, Jennifer, can you scroll up a little bit? You'll see that there's a pending grade in yellow. Students told us over and over again, our other version only had the blue and the gray. They said they would freak out because they knew they had submitted something and the grade wasn't showing. So they wanted to also have reassurance that something that they knew was off their plate was at least pending grading, even if it hadn't yet been grading. So that was something that we did specifically to them. So we've got a bunch of other questions in here about when instructors publish assignments. Can you talk about that, Jennifer?
Sure. So that is one of the prerequisites for an assignment to show up here. So yeah, it does. One of the things we always tell students is, you know better than the system. If there's something that you know is on the syllabus that isn't in the assignment planning view, you can you need to be aware that that difference is that the syllabus is going to be right and we are going to be wrong. As if it's not available in Canvas yet, MyLA doesn't know about it and doesn't show students. So yeah, you can get out of sync. And so one of the things we do recommend for instructors is to put all of the assignments in for their course at the beginning and at least publish them enough. Students don't need to get into be able to see the details of the assignment, but they do need to be published. So they need to see the due date, if there is one, the points possible do need to be there in order for it to show up in MyLA. So there can be some discrepancy, but instructor and syllabus rule when there's a difference between the two. MyLA is not the one that's right. So
I think we need to move on, and then if we still haven't answered questions, we can come back to them. So let's see the last view. That's one's the easiest to talk about.
Yeah, the grade distribution is very much the easiest. It's our simplest view. In this case, my class only has 13 in it, so it's not a very exciting grade distribution. Whereas if I had 200 students, it might be much more interesting. But what the grade distribution is showing them is the average grade, the median grade, the class size, and then their grade. And so you can see for this student, the average grade is 90, median's 91. They're just about at about that point. So they know they're about in the middle of the course in terms of the distribution. But when you look over here, what you're seeing is one of the privacy aspects that we put in here, because in the grade distribution, we wanted to make sure that any outlier grades are not compromising student privacy. So if you know somebody's not doing well in the class, but then there's only one person that's getting like 50% in the class, we don't want you to know their grade. So what we've done is we've binned all of the lowest grades together. So it's the bottom 5 grades in the course are binned into a bin here. Right now, it's under 92%. I, as student C, happen to be in that bin. I have a 91.4%. Somebody else might have an 83%. Somebody might have a 60%, but they're all just binned in this one bar in the histogram. And there's not a lot of interaction the students can do with this particular visualization, but based on feedback that we got, some of them want to know the shape of the grade distribution, but they don't want to see their own grade in that shape. And so they can uncheck that, and then it hides the line, their grade line on the histogram, and it removes their grade from the text over on the left. And so instead, what they can see is the shape of the distribution.
We heard from some interviewing with students that often that's all they want to see is the shape of the distribution. And what they really want to know is, does it change over time? Because say that there's a midterm and I think I did terribly. I go and look at the grade distribution and the whole thing is moved to the left. And then I know, oh, everybody didn't do very well. The whole class moved down. So even though it feels like a bad grade for me, it's not in the context of how this midterm was graded for everybody. Yeah, we only bin the low side of the outliers. We aren't really so worried about the high end. We've talked about that. If anyone wants to have a discussion about that, I'd be happy to hear it. Mostly we were worried about, the underachievers, the students who are performing poorly. We didn't want them to be identifiable. You know, you think about when you're sitting in a class and you would see some person's down here at 53% and the next highest grade is, 75%. And you're like, oh, I bet I know who that is. That's that guy who always sits in the back when he comes and never says a word, or, something like that. Yeah, I know, Kim, we'll talk about it. Okay. But not right here, right now.
Right. And to your other question, that yes, it does require that instructors are managing the grade book in Canvas, because that is where the grade information is coming from. So if they're not going to use the gradebook in Canvas, we would recommend they don't use the grade distribution, because it could just cause confusion for their students.
The other thing I want to point out to you is that although we use the word grade in a number of places, you'll notice that there's not actually any grades on any of our views. And we did this for a couple of reasons. One is theoretical. We know that we've seen, and there's research showing that when you make grades the focus, students change from being mastery oriented to being performance oriented. Mastery oriented is like, I want to learn this. I need to learn as much as I can. Performance oriented is, I want to get an A. Students who are strictly performance oriented do not do as well academically as students who are mastery oriented. So that's why we conceptualize their performance in terms of what % of available points. The other reason to not show grades on this histogram is because, like I said, instructors have very different systems for grading. We don't want Canvas to be we don't want MyLA to be telling them they're going to get an A all through the term, and then their final grade comes in and it's an A- or, God forbid, a B+. So that was our decision there and throughout all the visualizations.
I'm going to jump us back to our demo slides here as soon as Google decides to respond. So thank you for all the questions throughout. That was great. It's helpful to hear those as we're going. And Stephanie has a few other slides to talk about some of the research that we've been able to do.
Are we okay for time, Kathy? Do we need to?
You're absolutely fine for time. You have about 12 minutes and the questions are coming throughout. So that seems pretty
Great.
steady. Quickly, I did drop a link into the doc. If anybody wants to drop their email address onto that document, Stephanie can use that to send out the surveys. I can use that to send the recording if you want it.
Great. Thanks. Why use MyLA? Well, we're not here claiming it's the best dashboard ever. I think it's better than than the ones we've seen. Nor do we claim that it's going to make all students, learning better. But the bottom line is Canvas doesn't have any analytics for students, and other systems do, and students want it. We also think, and this is, as I said earlier, one of our research questions, that supporting self-regulation may be particularly important in this online learning thing. And I don't know what your campus is deciding, but I've heard that even that our large lecture gateway courses are still going to continue to be online because we can't put that many students in those classrooms. So there's undoubtedly still going to be some online components for students where they're going to not have the opportunity to be sitting next to someone in the classroom and saying, wow, that was really hard. Did you think that was hard? Or I haven't read that yet. Did you read it? Did you understand today's lecture better because you read, what we're supposed to read? There's a lot of stuff that students get from their peers and other interactions that are missing in the online environment. And the other thing that we were focusing on is the system and using the system makes very, very few demands of instructors and doesn't require them to do things like, nope, sorry, if you're going to use MyLA, you can't grade on a curve. So there are things that work better when they do them, and we have some recommendations for instructors, but we knew it would be a losing battle from right out of the starting gate if it required a lot of changes and activities on the instructor's part. So do students use it? If you give it to them, if you build it, will they come? Here is the data from our 3 full terms. We haven't got it all updated for this recent fall term, but you can see that the total unique users as a % of the population. So that first winter, we got just over half the students using it, which meant that there were almost 900 students in those rosters for the courses that had it turned on. We have a slightly lower amount in fall and winter. If you want to know what they're using when they use it, those 3 views are across the top, that resources access view, the assignment planning view, and the grade distribution. And as should come as no shock, yes, the grade distribution view is the one that they use over and over and over again. Interestingly, they used it less in winter 20, but that was our interrupted COVID pandemic term, where our school, like many of yours, decided not to give students letter grades. So their fixation on the grade distribution was lower in that term than in a typical term. But you can see by and large that they are using all 3, but in particular, they're using that grade distribution view. Yes, next. So what are students saying about it? We have, comes out of our survey data. And remember that this is self-selected students, and some of our survey data is non-users. Of course, that's not represented here, but we asked them, is using the assignment view, for example, influential for studying and preparing for exams and so forth? And so you can start to see the not at all percentages. The students who answer this, who say each of these views was not at all useful to them, is somewhere around a quarter or less, but you can, and you can see that it's from slight to very definitely impact for most of these items, whether it's valuable, each of them, and so forth. So you can get some sense of students' relative interest and appreciation for the different views by looking at this. We did, in terms of usability, our original questionnaires had more questions that were usability oriented, just to make sure we achieved our goal of designing something that students could actually figure out how to use. And indeed, that number was very small. We asked them if using MyLA changed various behaviors. And this is just an average here, but about 2/3 of them reported positive things. They changed how they studied, it changed their confidence that they understood the course material, and it changed the way they planned their course activity. Those things are all really important to us. And we want to drill down into that data to see, are there systematic differences in who's reporting those changes and the value of those changes. Now, going back to the social comparison question, everybody wants to know, does giving the grade distribution view make students anxious? We asked that same question about all three of the views, if it made them anxious. And you can see that, well, here that some students reported experiencing some anxiety as a result of MyLA, but most of those were in the slight or only somewhat increased category. There was a very anxious category, and that little alphabet soup at the end there, GD, that just means that more students were in that very anxiety in the grade distribution than the assignment planning or the resources access. But that being said, those were very, very low numbers. And again, we want to know, who are those students, and is it related to their performance? Are these students who are getting freaked out about it? Or more freaked out about it than their peers? Are they scoring poorly? Did they have a different goal for the class that they're not meeting, and so forth? We also asked them if seeing it made them happy. So we used a 2x2 scale that is affective valence, positive or negative, by affective intensity. So I'm giving you the highly intense negative is anxiety, and the highly intense positive is being happy. And most of them report being happy, and that's likely to vary as a result of viewing MyLA. More students are happy when they're looking at resources accessed than assignment planning. And then, of course, we got a few more not at all happy in the grade distribution view, but those numbers are similarly small, single digit to barely double digit. So I think by and large, this shows that that looking at these views makes a lot of students somewhat a little bit anxious, but nobody is, very few students are really expressing a lot of anxiety over seeing what they're seeing here.
Yeah, and we're getting some great questions in the chat about
Great.
potential research avenues.
Yay!
So, tracking students to see if the course grade is related to usage. Yes, absolutely something we're interested in.
Yes.
So are the higher achievers using the system more than those who are more relaxed about their performance? I love that phrase,
Yep.
relaxed about their performance. Again, which students use it? So is it students with higher GPAs who already have good skills and see it as another tool versus others? A question that we haven't looked at, I don't think at all, is whether students who used MyLA access more resources than students who don't use MyLA. And I think that's a very interesting question.
Yep. We had to figure out how to integrate Canvas data with MyLA data, because the MyLA data is stored in the UDP, right? And so a couple of people on my team spent a significant amount of time figuring out how to line up the data so you could answer that question. So we figured out how to do that. Now, when they tried to make models about behaviors, because what we really were looking at was, what are students doing before they go to MyLA, and what are they doing after they leave MyLA? And so we were looking for those sequences and got really frustrated, because frankly, the learning management system has a lot of opportunities, right? There's a lot of variability in what students can be doing. So it's very difficult to identify some patterns. We'd hope to identify patterns that then we could see if they correlated to performance. So, this is still very much a work in progress, and it is labor intensive to integrate those data sources. So this is another great reason for us all to collaborate and write some scripts that allow us to do this and dig deeper into this. But I think that is a great question. A lot of good questions here. This was a big effort by a lot of people and from all over campus. And I think that's part of what's made it really successful. I've often called it my dream team. And I feel very lucky to have had all these people involved in producing MyLA. And I feel very lucky. I tell people all the time, I feel lucky that U of M not only allows this kind of work, but supports it, and that we're a Unizin member so that we can share it with other schools and expand what we know about how dashboards are working for students. So any final questions or issues?
So I don't know if I count as a final question or issue. This is Kathy.
Yeah.
Unizin. I want to say just a couple of things here. First of all, thank you so much, Stephanie and Jennifer. Just incredible amount of data. I remember when you thought this would be a 30-minute presentation, and obviously easily go an hour and probably could go further. I've stuck the Unizin Summit in the chat. It's free this year. It's virtual. We've almost doubled the number of registrations we've ever had at a live event. So help us spread the word, or if you haven't signed up yourself, please sign up. Jennifer, I know, and maybe Stephanie too, but I also know for a fact that Jennifer is presenting on MyLA, should you wish to get more of this or quiz her even more at the summit on the very first day. And so are a lot of other Unizin members presenting what they've done with the Unizin data platform. Last but not least, we had 93 people at my last count. So we didn't quite break 100, but we definitely lead the way on the webinar, and we had 7 board members, if that counts for something extra. So thank you all for attending. If you haven't gone to the document that's in the chat, please do so now. I'll keep the webinar live for a few minutes after. I had the permissions wrong the first time. If you tried, stick your email in there. It might make it easier for Stephanie to send out the survey, for me to know who to send the recording to if you want a copy of it to pass it around, or whatever else it is you want. So if you want to be on that list of people who attended for anything or questions that we're answering afterwards, sign up on that doc that's listed earlier.
Yep. All I was going to say is also feel free to send us email. I mean, sometimes balls get dropped on my end too, or your end, and we're here and we're happy. We're happy to engage with you. Go ahead, James, sorry.
Great. No, I just included a link to Unizin's My Learning Analytics page that talks about implementing, in particular, what your Canvas admins would need to know, in particular around the LTI integration. So that link is in chat. Thanks again.
Yeah, fabulous presentation. Thank you. Thank you all for coming, and think about multi-institutional research here. This is an application that clearly is ripe for that. Thank you all. I'll stay live in case anybody's typing in the doc and still needs that link until you all sign off, all 93 of you. Thank you, Jennifer and Stephanie.
Absolutely.
Hey, Sean.
Kathy, can you post the doc again? My internet has been in and out, and I purged it from my chat.
Give me a minute while I figure out where all my screens are. It's embarrassing. I know it's around here somewhere. Yeah, here we go. I think this is one will work for you. One sec. I find the transfer from Box to Google is a bit challenging for me, and I tend to forget the permissions. So see if this one works for you, Chad, and if it doesn't, I'll try the other one. We're down to the magic 3. This feels like the Sweet 16 or something, and now there's 3.
Okay, so just put in my name here and
an email address would be helpful. If not, we'll look you up. I know where to find you, Chad. You're in?
Yes, it's working. Fantastic.
I got it right. All right. Jennifer, I'm assuming we will find you if you want. They're probably going to ask you questions, not put you there. So.
No, that's absolutely totally fine. Yeah. So,
I'm going to do a quick copy of all the chat too, if anybody wants that.
Thank you. Yeah, I would love a copy of that, especially because there were some really good questions in there about research. Some of them our team has talked about, some of them hasn't. but the more widely the more audiences that we bring this to, the more feedback we get, which is just great from the development side and the research side.
Absolutely. I'll send it to you. I've got it. Okay.
Okay, great. Anything else you need from me today?
I don't think so. Fabulous job. Thank you very much. You can
All right.
develop another MyLA that's equally popular. Sure.
Oh, sure, I got plenty of time. No worries.
Get right on that. No, thank you very much.
I'll let you know. Bye.
Take care. It must be Wednesday. Bye-bye.